Yeah. Driss Telmidi, who's the CEO, will be signing this. The financing will boost the local dairy sector and the associated value chains in Mauritania and help standardize the industry. 19.6 million euros for a 100 metric ton per day dairy processing and bottling plant in Mauritania. The financing deal has been signed. The documents are revealed. The handshake is done. The deal is done. Now, moving quickly on to number 4. For this, Dennis, I'll also need you to represent. Dennis, I'll need you to represent Afreximbank for this. And I will also call from Banco Nacional de Investimentos, or BNI for short, Dr. Abdul Jivain. Dr. Abdul Jivain. Do we have Dr. Abdul Jivain with us? Could you please raise your hand, Dr. Abdul Jivain? There he is. Hello, Doctor. He'll be representing BNI. And now this is an SME financing agreement between Banco Nacional de Investimentos of Mozambique and Afreximbank. And the financing will directly contribute to alleviating specific financing constraints, which we've heard about, facing export-oriented SMEs in Mozambique. And the financing will strengthen financial intermediaries' capacity, BNI's capacity, to support SMEs using Afreximbank's SME financing product. And it will help the country generate foreign currency proceeds, given that the sub-borrowers are small and medium-sized enterprise exporters operating within the agribusiness sector. And the two institutions have signed, that is the SME financing agreement between BNI and Afreximbank. Congratulations, gentlemen. Now, last but certainly not least, the final document deal to sign is the Springfield Exploration and Production Limited. The Springfield Exploration and Production Limited signing ceremony. The Executive Vice President, is Kanayo still with us? She's not with us. So who's going to sign on behalf? Okay, all right. And then Oluronti Dokati is going to sign for Afreximbank, I believe. And Gina Malkani is the Chief Operating Officer for Springfield Exploration and Production Limited. Do we have Gina Malkani, the COO of Springfield Exploration, with us? Do we have the second party, the second signatory with us? If you're here, please raise your hand so we can see you and know that you're in the room. Okay, the signatory for Springfield Exploration is with us, and this is a signing ceremony of the financial advisory mandate letter and heads of terms between Afreximbank and Springfield Exploration and Production. Springfield is appointing Afreximbank as its trusted financial advisor for the proposed debt raise of $750 million. The facility will be utilized towards funding capital expenditure, operational expenditure, and cash calls related to the operations of the Sankofa field. It has been signed. And the signing ceremony is done. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for witnessing those signing moments in proceedings. Now earn your coffee break. Coffee and tea and light snacks are in the marquee, I'm told. Just go out of the doors, and I believe to the right. If we could do this quickly and be back here in 15 minutes or so, just grab a bite and then come back. We have leveraging the power of science and technology in the digital era up next. I'll see you in 15 minutes.
That can be built like me. It's coming really interesting what's happening now. But anyway, I digress and I come back to our theme today. So ladies and gentlemen, I believe we're going to have a very important conversation today on leveraging the power of science and technology in a digital era.
Is required, the standards that are required. It is the answer to meeting these standards and requirements that will give you a pathway to technology.
Right.
Is it existing? Is it something you need to develop on your own? I mean, these are questions that can be answered based on the preferences that you want to use, the markets that you want to target, the sectors that you think will help you grow your economy.
Right. Okay, we'll get to some specific examples later on. But let me go to Prof. now. Prof, maybe some opening thoughts on the critical role of science and technology in driving intra-Africa trade.
Mr. Moderator, you know, this subject is too important for us to be addressing. But be that as it may, I hope that people will trickle in as we speak. I was saying earlier that, you know, science and technology is not exactly very sexy. But it is at the base of all that we do. So you are asking me a question as to how science and technology can become the foundation for improving inter-Africa trade. As a matter of fact, science and technology, how do you even begin to trade? How do you produce what you trade? Whether it is in services or whether they are goods. Everything that you trade is based on knowledge. But the more fundamental question is who owns the knowledge, who commands the knowledge, who can deploy it, and how profitable is it in the deployment in the continent. So those are the questions. It is not whether you need. It is the quantum you need. It is the type you need. Because, let's face it, knowledge in itself also breeds ignorance. As you advance in knowledge, we're also advancing in ignorance. So the new frontiers are making people look like they don't know. And that is the reality. And so you have to decide where you want to play. Do you want to belong in the half that knows, or on the other half that doesn't know? And depending on where you play, will also determine how you deploy and use technology. So in re-engineering trade in Africa, we have to re-engineer our understanding of the role of science and technology in the production process. And that means that we need to go to the fundamentals. Capacity building, not simply consuming technology. How are we going to be players in the production of technology? I get a sense sometimes that Africans have resigned themselves as consumers of technology rather than being partakers in the production process of technology. And that is very dangerous. And I had hoped that ministers will be here to listen to us, because we have not placed this subject appropriately in our development discourse. We have paid lip service, minimal attention to this issue, because we think that someone else will produce the knowledge and technology with which Africa will develop, rather than us engaging seriously in how we ourselves are going to produce them.
I would like to stay on that point for a moment because clearly highlights capacity building. But perhaps that is driven, I mean, the lack of focus on that could be driven on a perception that the capacity does not exist. And so the best way to address that shortcoming is to simply just import, if you like, technology or capacity. And I want to hear your thoughts about the capacity that actually does exist in Africa. Perhaps it's underappreciated. From what you've seen across the continent, what can you say about that?
So there are two aspects to your question. One is fundamentally what I call knowledge dependence and self-doubt. And I think I've alluded to it in my earlier statement. Knowledge dependence means don't worry about it, somebody else has the idea, and you simply import it. Self-doubt is when you have your own people generate new ideas or even create technologies and you don't accept them because they are your own people. But if you came from somewhere else, and by the way, this is also not limited to technology. Africans are still heavily engaging external consultants even when they have internal capacity. So that in itself is an issue because there are nuances, even with technology, even with knowledge, that an external party will not understand. And those nuances override the main issues that perhaps the technology has come to address. And so the point to be made is that, yes, there are some capacity, but let's be honest, we don't have critical capacity. And we don't have capacity at the cutting edge. I always ask this question. Name one world-class engineering faculty in Africa. Just one. We have a multiplicity of engineering schools, but go and check the laboratory. Go and check whether they are at the cutting edge. As a matter of fact, once we produce scientists that are at the cutting edge, they leave the continent. So capacity is an issue. If in 2012, I read the story of how this phone by Steve Jobs that we are carrying.
iPhone.
iPhone was made in China. Because Obama confronted Steve Jobs. Why did you make iPhone in China instead of the US? And his simple answer was, I was able to recruit 8,000 engineers in 2 weeks in China. I will not be able to do that in the States, even in 9 months. And there was a certain urgency because you know how Apple is. They've already announced the date, and there were glitches. And Steve Jobs drove his executives and said, listen, the date is the date. We need to get this thing out. It was in China that he found 8,000 engineers willing to work 12 hours a shift with over another, perhaps 12,000 vocational workers ready. That's how Apple made iPhone in China. So capacity at both the engineering, investment in STEM.
Right.
If you go to our universities now, I don't know the situation in Ghana, admissions are mostly into Faculty of Law, Business Administration. Not that those things are not important. But mathematics, engineering, physics, and so we need to incentivize students to begin to study the subjects that we place out as the frontier of the science and knowledge.
Very strong, solid points. And taking away from all the points you made about capacity at the cutting edge, let's hear from Brian, because I think what the Afreximbank has created with the African Medical Center of Excellence is potentially cutting edge stuff. So maybe you can first of all allow the audience to understand what this is about and how the African Medical Center for Excellence is supporting what we're talking about today in terms of bringing greater science and technology impact on the African continent?
Sure, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My experience with the Frexham Bank over the last many months has been a fantastic experience, and looking forward to continuing to work with them on this important project. The African Medical Center of Excellence was conceived several years ago, actually, and has culminated in a large medical center project being constructed in Abuja, Nigeria. This is currently 1 year under construction. We've got about a year and a half left. It will be, I would dare say, the only medical center of its kind in terms of the combination of therapies and diagnostics on the continent. The plan there is to bring expertise in the areas of oncology or cancer, cardiovascular, and then hematology or blood disorders. Those are gap areas that needed to be addressed. Many good hospitals, not only in Nigeria but in West Africa. We wanted to focus on some areas that needed particular attention. The technologies that we're bringing include radiotherapy. We not only have 2 linear accelerators coming in, we have a cyclotron which will produce radioactive isotopes. There is currently 1 small PET scanner in Nigeria that is open 1 day a week. Ours will be open consecutively, permanently. And to have a PET scanner, which for those who aren't aware, it is a CT scanner, but it allows cancers to light up. And we can detect them much more easily and sooner. To operate those, though, requires radioactive isotopes. And so we're bringing in a cyclotron which produces radioactive isotopes. And it will not only handle our needs, but the needs of anyone else who wants to bring in a PET scanner in the area. We'll be able to provide them with those materials. Some of the things that we'll be doing with blood disorders, we will be working with a stem cell lab to not only treat sickle cell, but to cure it. Leukemia, cardiovascular needs. The technology that we are bringing in will allow us to, in real time, monitor blood flow in and out of the heart.
So sorry to jump in, Brian, but there's a particular aspect of what I think the medical center is going to be doing, which I think is very important for this conversation, and that is the research and development possibilities and potential engagement with corporate Africa in terms of getting some of these solutions, some of the advancements in knowledge that will be seated in that institution out there.
Yep. So to address the business aspects of it, we've gotten a tremendous amount of interest from not only companies in Nigeria and West Africa, but they are interested in investing. Some that you might not expect. NNPC, the Nigerian petroleum company, is set up to be one of our biggest investors. They're also set up to be one of our biggest sources of referrals. Along with their 20,000 employees, there are a total of probably 100,000 when you consider dependents and children. How else can I answer the question you're asking?
Okay, so let me give you an example, and maybe this will help. So from the little I've been able to gather in terms of some of these type of partnerships, academia, PPP, if you like, partnerships, we have in the Hebrew University of Jerusalem partnerships that are taking of course, scientific discoveries to big pharma in that country and across the world. I understand that that university on its own is responsible for thousands and thousands of patents. So I'm just wondering, to what extent would this institution support those type of partnerships?
Oh, yeah. Well, we just had a meeting last night with some representatives from Johns Hopkins in the U.S. My team and I are in the process of introducing ourselves and meeting with the administrations of several of the major medical centers in the area throughout Nigeria, but also in West Africa. And that includes introductions to the universities that we will be collaborating with. Now, part of what we are doing includes an education and research component. So there will be a medical school for training doctors and nurses, but there will also be clinical research, clinical trials. So we'll be working with pharmaceutical companies to test medications. Something that's not quite apparent is the genomic work that was done for Europe, done for Asia, done for the US. As you go to the different areas of the world, the genomes change just a little bit. There's a lot of work to do here on the African continent. And so we will be able to work with the pharmaceutical companies to make those adjustments that allow medicines to be metabolized properly for the African people.
Sounds quite exciting. Yeah. Okay, we just had someone else join us on the panel.
The advisory board of New African Capital Partners. We apologize, Mr. Gomez. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. And great to hear your perspective on this topic. So maybe I'll allow you to share a few words and then we'll go deeper into this.
Well, I don't know if I missed some of the part from
you didn't miss too much.
My colleagues.
We're essentially trying to see how we can leverage science and technology to drive greater trade on Africa.
Yes, so I had a long discussion in the past on how should we try to be kind of more practical in terms of leveraging this knowledge, and how do we really map out where to focus on this partnership.
Right.
And I think that based on my experience, I think the key is how to map out some very key institution of excellence and create a network of those institutions of excellence, and kind of focus on resources we could allocate to those institutions. There is a kind of an alphabet soup of institutions that we have now in the continent, wholly funded on many occasions. And I think that there's a time now to kind of map out those that are really linked to what we are trying to do in terms of leverage for our prosperity and channel the resources to that. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there are some experience in which you have, I would say, African multinationals who can be also depository of some of type of institution inside those institutions, those companies. I'll give you an example of what's going on, for example, with OCP, which is the Moroccan phosphate and fertilizer institution, and how they have managed to create an ecosystem with university and center of excellence, very much linked to the nature of the business. Because I think one of the key aspects, I think, as we move forward as African in our process of transformation is how do we keep learning? There seems to be a situation in which we learn, we go to university, and someone was talking about this earlier. We go to university, and then we start working, and then we stop.
Right.
And I think the key now is how do we keep people learning during the whole process? And institution of excellence and on research can help to make sure that we keep people in a constant process of learning, even in their own company. And this can be an incentive to the private sector, public-private sector institution. And finally, I think it's important for us also to look at the context. I think a few years ago, when we were pushing about this network of center of excellence, we didn't have the level of digital intelligence that we have now.
Yeah.
So now that we have this massive digital intelligence in which machine also will play an important role, which is a kind of a combination of algorithm and the machine, how this will impact institution of excellence and learning. And I think we need to kind of step back and look at it, because a major change is taking place, and this will require probably rationalizing those institutions and see, again, how we focus resources to make them optimal. So I will stop here.
I think the last point is very important, being able to aggregate and harness that machine learning capacity and intelligence. But the first point I think is also very important, which is being able to identify those centers of excellence. So as I go back to you, sir, I want to get your perspective on that. As we try to map out how we want to make the Africa Common Free Trade Area blossom as a true free trade zone that benefits the entire continent, I want to hear your thoughts about how we infuse these centers of excellence thinking around how we infuse science and technology into all of this. Yes, well, it's for you. Yes, go ahead. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Look, technology, like most phenomena around us, has risks and opportunities. In today's world, technology is pervasive in all aspects of our lives, from the time you wake up to the time you sleep. So the issue for me, and I think is what we should advise ourselves, where does the role of government fit in? When we speak of free markets, I want us to be, there's nothing like a free market anywhere in the world. We are talking about markets with rules. If you go to our big brother, you can't even design a product and use it. You need a permit. You need who to sell it to. All these are regulated. So government, from a trade policy point of view, like I said earlier, needs to determine which sectors will be best for development or for economic growth. Then, whatever technologies you now use, including even the use of artificial intelligence, would now need to be regulated. Because at the end of the day, the issues to address, what value added is the technology bringing? The technology must be people-centered, because if you automate too much, in Africa, for example, you create unemployment. If you automate too much without regulation, like we were hearing about the African Center for Medical Excellence, what happens to the nuclear material that you are having? So you need to have not just a regulatory framework, but also the institutions that will manage how these technologies are used.
Right.
And who the products can be sold to. And the research institutes or curricula from primary school, secondary school, all the way. If you look at many of our developed countries now, children are being taught coding in nursery school. When in most African countries, people have learned computer science in universities without access to a computer.
Moment for deep thought there. Right, thank you. By the way, I would like to open this up to the audience in a moment. But before that, perhaps, Brian, maybe you can chime in on lessons from other parts of the world. We're trying to layer more S&T on to what we're doing in the African continent to make the free trade area work. What can we learn from other parts of the world, from where you've seen technology applied to business and driving economic developments in general?
Yeah, yeah. What I've heard my fellow panelists talk about this morning is the fact that science and technology are tools that can be used to enhance the trade that we seek to engage in. That was about 17 years ago. I met a man by the name of Jim Collins, who wrote probably one of the greatest books on organizational transformation that I've ever read. And the book was entitled Good to Great. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, is taking things that are pretty good and making them great. And the first chapter of his book was entitled First Who. And what he was referring to was leadership, and who is really driving the bus that we're on. He talks about level 5 leaders, ones that are both humble and extremely driven with a strong will to get things done. The things that I've seen work in other areas of the world, lots of companies have technology and science. In Jim Collins' book, he studied 1,453 Fortune 500 companies. 11 of them, 11 met the criteria that he was looking for, which was 15 years of average to poor performance, followed by 15 years of superb, sustained performance. Only 11 out of 1,453, and the common denominator was the leadership involved. And so as we talk about science and technology, it cannot go with talking about people and who is going to be driving that. I'm from Texas, and in Texas we have a lot of horses. And we can have some of the fastest horses, best performing horses, but at the end of the day, who was the jockey? Who was the guy riding the horse?
Right.
And so if I could add one thing that we look at as we invest in science and technology, it would be investing in world-class leadership. And you talk about how we infuse science and technology in the corporate environment, embedding some of those world-class leaders in our learning institutions is one of the best places to start. We can talk about the need out there. We can generate excitement around science and technology, but then we have to keep them. In 2018, Africa had 16 million students enrolled in higher learning. For comparison, the US only had 21 million. Very, very close. So we are training our people on this continent. We are producing them. We must keep them. And one of the ways we keep them is making sure that they are able to earn a living, provide for their families. And then as the governments help us to clear a path for business to come in and make use of this science and technology, the jobs will be available.
Got it. Prof, you wanted to chime in there?
No, this is a very important point, and I wanted to make it even more direct. There is a certain advantage that backwardness confers. When you are backward, it means you are operating way, way, way below the production possibility frontier globally. What that means is that, like I said in the session yesterday, there are a lot of settled technology. People keep talking about R&D as if you're going to go to the lab to now discover how air conditioners are made, or how cars are made, or how so many of these things are settled. It is the exploitation of the settled technology. That's where the growth comes from. And that's what China did. But you need to have capacity to be able to re-engineer, to adapt, to recreate. If I give somebody who studied engineering a machine, a microwave oven, can the person tear it apart and recreate it and in the process learn? That capacity is needed because technology exists. You need to build engineering, science, and technology capacity to be able to recreate. The reason why developed countries don't grow at 6-7% is that they are the frontier. They have to do new research. We do not have to do new research. We have to just exploit what already exists. And if I may, because you asked for examples from other countries.
Right.
I was just reading recently. All of us are familiar with the new speed train that China deployed from Beijing to Guangzhou. China didn't have the know-how. They tried severally and failed. What did they do? They went to Germany, Japan, and France and said, we need help. Let me talk about France. In France, they ordered 60 sets of the train. But listen to the story, the important part of the story. They said, you will bring only 3 completely made. 6 you will bring in parts, and our engineers will assemble them in China. The rest you will have to manufacture in China. Out of 60, 3 only came complete, 6 came in parts, which Chinese people assembled. The rest was manufactured in China. I'm sure you can guess the conclusion. By the time they finished this process, they have already mastered the process of recreating this technology on their own. The African president will go and sign an agreement for 60 trains, will allow China to bring all the employees to assemble it, will ask them to stay here and run it, because the thinking is Africans just want a train. They are not interested in reproducing the train, which is a fallacy. And so, for us, I was here in Accra a couple of years ago, and we were discussing economic transformation. And I insisted that if we are going to discuss economic transformation, it must include a measure that that African nation has a capacity to create, recreate, own certain parts of technology. It's not a matter of you just take in, you consume, electricity is here, you don't know how it is generated. You mentioned Hebrew University in Israel. Hebrew University is the painkiller of Israel, Israeli government. If they have headache, Hebrew University. If they fracture their leg, Hebrew University. They have 10,700 patents, one university. Total African patents, not up to 2,000. So you begin to understand, that's why Israel is the startup nation of the world. Because there is a belief in that institution, there is capacity in that institution, they have re-engineered the institution in such a way they have relationship with the private sector, such that what is being produced here has a home. Right now, the gap between those who are researching and inventing and those who are able to take them up is so huge. And that is why leadership comes in. Science, technology-led development is a leadership endeavor. Take it or leave it. America went to the moon because John F. Kennedy said so in 1962 at Rice University in York, Texas. He didn't have complete knowledge, he didn't know what he was talking about. But that's the power of vision of a leader. That before the end of that decade, America will land somebody in the moon. And in 1969, July, they did. The power of a visionary leader. He now put together assets for that purpose. Why is Cuba the leading producer of vaccines in the world? A study was done that showed that Fidel Castro, when he was alive, in some of the vaccine projects, was stopping by the laboratory every day on his way to work to ask, what do you need? What do you want? COVID came. Cuba is able to produce their own vaccines. So COVID has taught us that you cannot always depend on someone else. You need to have the capacity to produce certain things for yourself.
Thank you very much. There was a lot in there. We have just about 5 minutes to round this up. Mr. Gomez, maybe you can take it up from where he left off and maybe continue to
I think he
reflect
has
on this
made
point.
very good points. And there are some common elements that I think he has underlined. A lot of depend on the mindset. And I think we have an issue of mindset to solve as African. And that's difficult to quantify, difficult to grasp, but it's an important element that combined to leadership can take you quite faster where you're going. The second thing is I think we need to focus because the way we split on 50-something countries, which we have to recognize, it was a big mistake that happened in the 19th century. How do we deal with it now? I think our founding fathers were quite smart in saying that we shouldn't quarrel on redesigning those borders. And I think that's keeping us more or less in peace, even if we have spots of crisis. So if we recognize that we will not be able to put those empires and kingdoms together, the only thing that we need to do is how to combine some institutions together. And this linked to my first point I was underlining earlier, which is we cannot develop a set of multiple institutions in many countries. We need to kind of focus on which one we want to share together. A couple of centers of excellence in Africa that are known. Now, once you do that map out, you need to kind of plug enough resources on that. And it comes back to the issue of our mindset, because once we create that school and we have done the first stone and everything, we assume that things will work. We have to inject proper resources. But the context has changed a lot. The digital intelligence is changing things completely, so I think we need to set back and look at it and decide. Right. So to sum up, I think we need to map out those institutions and build a network of it. We put proper resources among ourselves to make sure that those institutions work. And then essentially, as he was mentioning, to see where we want to focus. If we want, for example, in this continent to do unit to assemble plane, there are certainly 2 or 3 countries that are very well positioned at this point to do something. Morocco, because they've played a lot, they've invested in Tangier to do that. But also Ethiopia, what they've managed to do with the Ethiopian Airway. I think if you combine those 2 countries and have an institution or an entity that could be the center of excellence between those 2 countries, I think the rest of the continent doesn't need to create the same thing. And then we could send people there, we can co-invest, we can even take shareholding in those institutions and make sure that we have that transformation.
Very well said. Sadly, I have just about 2 minutes to wrap up. So perhaps I'll give each person, I think you've pretty much summarized your views. Maybe the other 3 can have like 30 seconds or so to just summarize your perspective on this topic before we round up.
Well, my takeaway for all of us, these things don't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
It's not going to evolve. If it were to evolve, Korea will not be where it is today. somebody must make a conscious decision. Already we have a vision 2063. What are the benchmarks and pathway to that vision?
Got it.
We need to begin to make it happen. And all our governments must put in place the policy frameworks, the measures, and support them to create an environment where the private sector will prosper in providing these services, in creating jobs for our people.
Brian?
This notion of investing additionally in science and technology, there could not be a better example than Afrexim Bank has done with the African Medical Center of Excellence. You have a level 5 leader, and Professor Orama, who made connections between academia at King's College Hospital and the government of Nigeria with Afrexim Bank. There's the tripartite that we've talked about, and has worked with those three very distinct areas and very different areas to create a world-class medical center and to bring much needed science and technology in the area of healthcare to West Africa.
Great model to follow. Prof, as you round up, perhaps as you notice, the president has walked in, so maybe your closing comments will be directly to him.
No, you're a prophet. As if you knew.
But we only have about 30 seconds, please.
I was worried that he will not be here when I will make my closing remarks. And it's directed to Professor Rama. Prof, we need to create an innovation fund for Africa. And you are going to champion it. You will get another head of state who is a champion of science and technology to back you. You can collaborate with ADB, AU, and so on. It is overdue. Let's have a conversation around this with the African Technology Policy Studies Network and others. Not a big conference like this, small one, maybe in Cairo, maybe somewhere else, where we can thrash out this idea. Right. And you have a convening power, the resources are there, let's start small. And then we can instigate national innovation funds from the regional one. And perhaps advise African heads of states to have, just like they have economic advisors, they should have innovation advisors. That's my point.
Thank you very much. Prof, you have been designated a level 5 leader. Perhaps we'll give you a short right of reply to that comment. If we can have the microphone. There's one on stage. Should I bring it? Yes. I apologize to the audience. We had hoped to allow you to ask a few questions, but we have run out of time. But Prof, please, a few comments.
Well, okay, thank you very much. And let me thank the panelists, and apologize, I'm running from one meeting to the other. But I'm happy I met you before you closed. Afrexim Bank is a bank that really underpins everything it does with innovation. Because we understand that in the kind of environment we operate in, with many things we want to do, there's no beaten path. And because no beaten path, we have to innovate, we have to be agile. So we welcome the suggestion you're making in terms of finding ways to make sure that this goes into the DNA of everything we do on the continent. And by the way, I think the AU also has big ideas about innovation. I've forgotten the commission that looks after it. But is it finance? I don't know which one that looks after it, but they have that.
Right.
In this world, where innovation is the key source of wealth, I don't think that anybody needs to even to debate what you said. I think it's something that has to happen. We just have to have a continental innovation strategy, I guess. Maybe the Africa Technology Policy Studies will help us with that. I don't know. But I agree with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Obviously, the Afrexim Bank has been recognized as a great conveyor of governments, the private sector, and so forth, and financiers. So we are hoping that we can leverage that convening power. Thank you so much. And please, if you can put your hands together for our panelists. I hope you've learned quite a bit from this conversation, and we look forward to taking it further after the conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll hand over to Mark.
Where is the group photograph?
Oh, yes. Please.
I
imagine we are stepping forward for a photograph, right?
Let's take with the president, too. Who is
President,
the camera?
please, by
Popular request.
popular demand, we would like you to join us.
Are we supposed to still have the microphone on?
Sure, we need
Okay, time for a quick family photo. I've got something special for you before the lunch break. So just for 15 minutes, we're going to do something that we always do every year. You're going to witness this. So just as they take the photo, I'll give them a moment to take the nice photo. And then I'm going to ask President Orama to stay on stage, please. Thank you, gentlemen. If you could take your seats again. President Orama, this is what happens when you've got too many friends, like President Orama. I'd like to start with the final element before lunch, and that is the launch of the Afrexim Bank African Trade Report. So, President Orama. Aha. Okay. This is actually we have the chief economist coming up in a moment. I just want to tell you this is the launch of the Afrexim Bank African Trade Report, and it's entitled this year. It's entitled Export, Manufacturing, and Regional Value Chains in Africa under a New World Order. A New World Order. It's quite a provocative title. And it looks at how this new emerging world order that is caused by this multitude of intersecting crises, that what we have to do, it's almost a roadmap of solutions: raise investment levels, close infrastructure gaps, both physical and digital, and strengthen regional coordination in the pursuit of manufacturing-led growth. It also outlines various policies and programs that can achieve that and accelerate what we call our VCs, regional value chains. And also, it's very interesting because it also shows elements of untapped export potential. I'm going to now call actually on the chief economist of Afrexim Bank, who has of course been sweating over a hot computer to make the 2023 report a reality, to come up and tell us a little bit more. In fact, I've got a microphone for you. Please welcome Hippolyte Fofak, chief economist of Afrexim Bank.
And good afternoon, everyone. I think we'd like to really thank the President for pushing us to really look at this specific topic, export manufacturing and regional value chains in really under a new world order. I think if you look at what has happened over the last few years, it's quite clear to say that one of the most important keyword, buzzword, has been friendshoring. Friendshoring, which is essentially locating supply chains in friendly nations or ally by way of mitigating the risk of supply chain disruptions for greater supply chain resilience. So informed by that, the President actually asked us to look at the potential for reviving export manufacturing and regional value chains under that condition, because it comes with risk, as we saw last year, As a result of the Ukraine crisis, there were further disruption of supply chains with implication for inflations, but also for growth, which essentially derailed. We saw global growth, which hit 6.2% after COVID, decelerating to less than 3.4% last year, reflecting the consequence of those supply chain disruptions and geopolitics and risk. But we also see at Afrexim Bank, which is really a trade finance bank for Africa, opportunity in that regard. And that's why we've seen essentially looking at the other coin, side of the coin, and this disruption, geopolitics, friendshoring actually offered opportunity for diversifying the sorts of growth and trade across the regions, especially given where Africa is in terms of low wages, but also what is happening in the rest of the world in terms of rising wages in Asia. I think that informed the choice of the theme this year, which is export manufacturing, as under the New World Order. Thank you.
Microphone, please.
But
Hello? Microphone.
thank you. Okay,
Hello, hello.
we're almost done.
One second. There you go.
Now, another important aspect of the report, beside the choice of the main theme, it's the trade report is bank flagship report, which look at really latest development in the area of trade and growth. As I mentioned, there was global growth that derailed as of the COVID-19, but also the Ukraine crisis. And we saw essentially sharp growth decelerations, both in terms of growth, but also in terms of trade. Global trade, which expanded by 10% after COVID, fell to less than 2.7% growth. What is quite interesting is that under that challenging global environment decelerations, we actually saw growth resilience within the African continent, with really African growth expanding by African GDP, expanding by almost 4%, way above the world average of 3.4%. In the trade space, as I said, there was sharp deceleration from 10% growth last year to just about 2.7% in 2022. But in the African context, we saw, on the other hand, quite an expansion of African trade, growing by more than 20% last year, unlike global trade. In part, the resilience of African economy is a combination of two factors. I think the first one is really the asymmetric natures of shocks facing the regions, and oil prices were actually rising last year. But another important driver of that resilience, it's the rising South-South trade, where essentially Asia became the leading regions trading with Africa, mitigating Africa exposure to the Euro regions, which was facing really at the heart of the Ukraine crisis. I think that resilience is what we expect to see going forward under that export manufacturing within the continent, which is set to be galvanized by the implementations of the African Continental Free Trade Area agreements. And that's why this report is so important, because it sees the geopolitical tensions, the rise of friendshoring as an opportunity within the context of the AFCFTA. But another important point to close is that when you look at the AFCFTA implementations, it's been discussed in the first day, and we are turbocharging that with the bank playing a major role, especially in the area of trade facilitations. But there are other actions that ought to be undertaken by African government to make sure that the changing geopolitical landscape, the rise of friendshoring and nearshoring on that new world order is actually better exploited by African countries. In that regard, we see in this report, it argues for the need to have essentially robust industrial policies, the need to successfully deliver on the rules of origin to actually accelerate the process industrializations and diversification source of growth. These are some of the major highlights of this report. I'm not going to keep much longer to stand between you and your lunch, but the report is very rich, and we intend to really hope that you will be using it in your work going forward, as done over the years in the past. Thank you very much, President.
Yes. Yes. So, as you know, every year, a lot of hard work is done in terms of demystifying and putting paths to how we get to the Africa we want through trade, through investment. And this is no different. This report is called Export Manufacturing and Regional Value Chains in Africa under a New World Order. So, ladies and gentlemen, will you please put your hands together as we officially launch the report for 2023. I'm going to ask the chief economist to join you as well, because, as I said, he held the pen, as we say in business, on this. So he certainly deserves a photo op. Any board members of Afreximbank, could you also join us quickly on the stage? And I see our past president, Jean-Louis Ekra. I think the lights are quite bright. Do I see you hiding in the corner there? If you do, please join us as well. President Ekra and the board members, please, let's have a family photo. They're super glasses. So we're going to take a picture now, just before lunch. So the report outlines various policies and programs to achieve the closing the infrastructure gap, raising investment levels, and strengthening regional coordination in the pursuit of manufacturing-led growth. It also reveals large untapped export potential in intra-African trade across sub-regions. And it's an argument, really, this report, for more robust investment, a closing of that infrastructure gap, and coordination. There you have it. The report for 2023 is officially launched, and you are officially launched into lunch, apparently. And I'm told it's 1 hour, and it's in the same place by now. You know where to follow for the food. I'll see you back here in an hour. And boy, the final, it's a sprint to the finish. We've got some incredible people. We've got the powerful media force that is Mo Abudu coming up. We also have Didier Drogba, Asamoah Gyan will be here. Make sure you're here in an hour. See you later.
energy is responsible for making everything happen. It lights up our cities, creates jobs, powers schools, and transports our people. It drives factories and industry and empowers innovation. It keeps us connected and enables science and exploration. With it, we give and receive better healthcare, and our standard of living in every aspect of life improves. Energy really is the cornerstone of the African economy. But what will we do if this precious resource runs out? How can we protect and develop this lifeblood of our beautiful continent? The African Energy Chamber will host African Energy Week at the Victoria and Alfred Waterfront in Cape Town. The interactive exhibition and networking event will run from 18 to 21 October. The 4-day conference will unite Africa's energy stakeholders, drive industry growth and development, and promote Africa as the destination for energy investments. Recognizing that energy transition is shaping global conversation, the week promotes the continent's position and the future of its energy sector. African Energy Week 2022 will be critical for the continent and its people.
Africa's premier trade and investment event, IATF 2023, is expected to attract over 1,600 exhibitors from more than 75 exhibiting countries and over 35,000 attendees, and is expected to generate up to $43 billion in trade and investment deals. IATF 2023 will once again consist of a trade exhibition where countries, large corporates, as well as small and medium enterprises, SMEs, can set up pavilions and exhibition stands which will enable them to customize their exhibition to fit their unique requirements. This offers private and public entities opportunities to showcase their goods and services. Trade and Investment Forum, the 4-day conference, will feature leading African and international speakers and a variety of sessions dealing with African trade and investment issues. Specifically, the conference will feature dedicated sessions on trade and investment opportunities under the AFCFTA and will also include training workshops covering exporting, standards, and marketing. Creative Africa Nexus, CANEX, will showcase Africa's creative economy in fashion, music, film, art and craft, and sport. The CANEX program will include a Creative Africa Summit and dedicated creative industry exhibition, a B2B and B2G platform. The platform will provide opportunities for matchmaking, business exchanges, and conclusion of business and investment deals. This is supported by a dedicated African Buyers Program. Country Days has sponsorship opportunities and is open to 4 countries. It presents a platform for the 4 selected countries to showcase their trade, investment, tourism, and cultural opportunities. IATF Virtual. This platform showcases goods, services, and investment opportunities on an interactive online platform. The IATF Virtual is currently live and will continue even after the physical trade fair has ended. The Africa Automotive Show will present a platform for auto manufacturers, assemblers, original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, and component suppliers to exhibit their products and also interact with potential buyers and suppliers. It consists of an auto forum, auto show, and B2B and B2G exchanges. The AU Youth Startup Program will have a dedicated pavilion for youth startups in Africa where they will showcase their innovative ideas, prototypes, goods, and services. The IATF will provide opportunities for matchmaking with venture capitalists, entrepreneurship training, networking among the youth and other delegates at the trade fair. IATF 2023 will provide a unique and valuable platform for businesses to access an integrated African market of over 1.3 billion people with a GDP of over $3.5 trillion created under the African Continental Free Trade Area. The African Export-Import Bank, African Union Commission, AFCFTA Secretariat, and our premium partners invite you to join us at IATF 2023 Intra-African Trade Fair, connecting African markets. For more information, visit www.intraafricantradefair.com.
Позвольте мне еще раз вас сердечно поприветствовать. Это действительно первая встреча такого масштаба. Здесь собрались представители всех 54 африканских государств и ведущих региональных организаций. Большое вам спасибо. До встречи.
Energy is responsible for making everything happen. It lights up our cities, creates jobs, powers schools, and transports our people. It drives factories and industry and empowers innovation. It keeps us connected and enables science and exploration. With it, we give and receive better healthcare, and our standard of living in every aspect of life improves. Energy really is the cornerstone of the African economy. But what will we do if this precious resource runs out? How can we protect and develop this lifeblood of our beautiful continent? The African Energy Chamber will host African Energy Week at the Victoria and Alfred Waterfront in Cape Town. The interactive exhibition and networking event will run from 18 to 21 October. The 4-day conference will unite Africa's energy stakeholders, drive industry growth and development, and promote Africa as the destination for energy investments. Recognizing that energy transition is shaping global conversation, the week promotes the continent's position and the future of its energy sector. African Energy Week 2022 will be critical for the continent and its people.
Africa's premier trade and investment event, IATF 2023, is expected to attract over 1,600 exhibitors from more than 75 exhibiting countries and over 35,000 attendees, and is expected to generate up to $43 billion in trade and investment deals. IATF 2023 will once again consist of a trade exhibition where countries, large corporates, as well as small and medium enterprises, SMEs, can set up pavilions and exhibition stands which will enable them to customize their exhibition to fit their unique requirements. This offers private and public entities opportunities to showcase their goods and services. Trade and Investment Forum, the 4-day conference, will feature leading African and international speakers and a variety of sessions dealing with African trade and investment issues. Specifically, the conference will feature dedicated sessions on trade and investment opportunities under the AFCFTA and will also include training workshops covering exporting, standards and marketing. Creative Africa Nexus, CANEX, will showcase Africa's creative economy in fashion, music, film, art and craft and sport. The CANEX program will include a Creative Africa Summit and dedicated creative industry exhibition, a B2B and B2G platform. The platform will provide opportunities for matchmaking, business exchanges, and conclusion of business and investment deals. This is supported by a dedicated African Buyers Program. Country Days has sponsorship opportunities and is open to 4 countries. It presents a platform for the 4 selected countries to showcase their trade, investment, tourism, and cultural opportunities. IATF Virtual. This platform showcases goods, services, and investment opportunities on an interactive online platform. The IATF Virtual is currently live and will continue even after the physical trade fair has ended. The Africa Automotive Show will present a platform for auto manufacturers, assemblers, original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, and component suppliers to exhibit their products and also interact with potential buyers and suppliers. It consists of an auto forum, auto show, and B2B and B2G exchanges. The AU Youth Startup Program will have a dedicated pavilion for youth startups in Africa where they will showcase their innovative ideas, prototypes, goods, and services. The IATF will provide opportunities for matchmaking with venture capitalists, entrepreneurship training, networking among the youth and other delegates at the trade fair. IATF 2023 will provide a unique and valuable platform for businesses to access an integrated African market of over 1.3 billion people with a GDP of over $3.5 trillion created under the African Continental Free Trade Area. The African Export-Import Bank, African Union Commission, AFCFTA Secretariat, and our premium partners invite you to join us at IATF 2023 Intra-African Trade Fair, connecting African markets. For more information, visit www.intraafricantradefair.com.
Позвольте мне еще раз вас сердечно поприветствовать. Это действительно первая встреча такого масштаба,